People are dying for your story. They're dying to hear everything we have to say. That's why there's never going to be enough podcasts or shows. Everyone can have one because everyone wants to hear what we have to say.
Welcome to Superpower with Kristine Milkovich, the podcast where we help you unleash your inner hero. Whether you're a change maker, a trailblazer, or just looking to level up, this is the space to uncover your unique superpower and transform it into unstoppable momentum. Join me as we dive deep with inspiring guests, sharing their game-changing insights, empowering us all to be the hero of our own stories. Get ready to embrace your deepest purpose, own your power, and change the world one bold move at a time. In this episode, we sit down and talk with Zak Shellhammer. Zak has been an executive marketing coach, real estate business coach, public speaker, conference guru, podcast host and creator, and so many more things. He brings such a authentic and transparent lens to not only his work, but just everything that he's putting out into the world. He really, really helps us define how to get out of our own way, take the first step, and just go out there and make it happen. In today's episode, we have a very, very exciting guest, a wonderful human being that I have had the great honor and fortune of getting to know actually just in the last 2.5 years. And this man has quite a list of background, experience, and things that he is putting into the marketplace to help support people. Just a few of them is a marketing coach, a biz maven coach, real estate broker, speaker, conference guru, and the list goes on. So we're super excited to have him on. It's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure. I can't wait to lean in and personally learn a little bit more about Zak Shellhammer. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kristine. I'm loving that introduction.
Do I get an A plus? Have I been
Oh,
coached a little
A
bit?
plus plus. Yes, yes, you've been coached well.
So Zak, I just saw you in the flesh. It
Oh,
feels
good.
like
Yes,
48 hours ago, but it's about a
feels like.
week and a half ago, attending the National Inman Connect conference. For those that are listening to the show that don't know what Inman is, it is a premier standout conference in the real estate lane, in the real estate sector. And yet another thing that is on Zak's CV that I did not mention is he is also an Inman ambassador 2025 and has been for, is it 3 years, Zak?
This would be the
Yeah,
third year, yeah.
third year. So, a couple of things that I'd like to start off with and dive in. I know you have followed the show, and again, us kind of getting to know each other as friends and our style. The intention is to be obviously conversational, but just chill. It's just you and I talking. And I know for myself, when I pick up a podcast, including yours in the corner and others, is, some nugget. If it's one nugget to me, it's been worth my 40, 45, 50 minutes. If it's a few nuggets, then game on, like talk about value, right?
True.
So that really is the intention of Superpower, hence the tagline, Unleashing Your Inner Hero. And I've seen some heroism in you already and just knowing you 2.5 years. But, you know, so many people listening, including me, and we'll get to the testimonial story of how I met you because it's a pretty big part of my current business story. But if someone listening is like, how do you get into coaching? How do you raise your hand and let brands and entities and organizations know that you have the ability to do a speaking engagement or have a voice on a topic or have skill excellence in a way or in something that you really feel like you can bring value to them? So, kind of talk to us a little bit how full circle career, real estate, but you're diving into sort of all these subcategories within the real estate sector. And I just love to hear about that and your journey and how you had the courage to start doing all these wonderful things.
Wow. That's
Loaded
it's a
question.
loaded question. When you started that question, I pictured, because I am very visual, as we know,
Mhm.
you just get batted around by the universe quite tragically until like a ping pong or a pinball. That's it. Pinball in the pinball machine, thwacking around with all the dinging and just paddles and all that. That's what it felt like to get to any semblance of a constructive, structured me. I
Mm.
don't think I know or knew what that looked like until very recently. I'm a horoscope person, so I'm a Leo. So I don't think you have to be a extroverted person. I certainly wasn't an extroverted person, but I was very forceful in my opinion from birth. I was definitely crawled out of the womb with my own opinion and wouldn't let anyone else change my mind. So that helps. I don't think that it's a requirement. You can learn to be a speaker. You can learn to be anything. It's just what speaks to your passion. And I can say that as a very outspoken individual, I am very passionate about expressing myself, always have been expressing myself and my opinion because I thought it was very unique because I came out and no one around me was like me.
Mm.
And when I say came out, I just mean that in all sorts of ways. Came out of the womb, came out of my house, came out and just looked around and thought, why aren't people more logical and more calm about things? And
Mm.
why don't they see things like I see things that make me feel much better about the world when everybody else is out here freaking out?
Mm.
So I've always been kind of teaching and consulting folks. When I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, as in like school teacher, because that was the only option that we knew of. And as I grew, I found that I am now definitely a teacher, just in a totally different capacity. I have always been outspoken, and I feel like that has helped guide my path. I've always been an artist. That definitely guides my path. And that's where I started was as an artist and sharing my what I found to be a unique vision with the world because I told you a little bit about this in Central Park when we were
Yeah.
walking to Central Park about my art. And I started as a kid painting these boring landscapes with acrylic paint and just everything that was already. And then I found oils and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, unique. It gives me time to make something a little bit more interesting. And then I thought, well, there's all this stuff in my head that no one knows about, that I see things differently than other people see things. And let me paint that instead. So I painted
Mm.
weird and wacky and interesting things. And I thought I was going to be an artist, just, famous artist painting happily for the rest of my life. But
Mm.
newsflash, doesn't pay very well unless you really hit it. And that takes a lot. And I really tried. I tried to hit that. But it led to more graphic design, more computer based. Thankfully, I was a teenager in the 90s who got on AOL Messenger really early and learned that there was this whole community of people out there in the world in my little small town of Pennsylvania. And found that there were people that appreciated that sort of art. And then what was graphic design back then? What was Adobe Photoshop? What was all of that before it really was anything? And I learned how to do that and fell into web design. And I loved web design, but that was like coding it by hand. We typed it all the characters, all the tags, all of the things. And I thought, oh, I could do this. And people didn't know how to do this. So that was my talent at the time. I graduated, moved to San Diego, thought I'm going to be a web designer. And then they changed everything, as they do often in computers. They don't
Every
code
five
by hand
minutes.
anymore. It was all these weird programs like Front Page and other things that no one's heard about anymore. And I lost my talent. I feel like I want to say I lost my superpower. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I found my way somehow to Las Vegas after many years of just kind of bouncing around, looking for a job, any job, because that's what we were taught. Just find something, just do something.
Work,
Work.
work, work, work.
I just work. Doesn't matter as long as you're getting a paycheck. And I found a marketing job with a real estate brokerage in Las Vegas in the early 2000s, and they were still using like Microsoft Paint and Word to create their flyers. So I come in with Photoshop and they're like, wow, this is really cool. He can do billboards and ads and all sorts of stuff. So I wowed them with this talent. And then the market bubble burst in Vegas, which means in our world, housing basically started to crash very slowly because we were at the very high end. We thought we were at the high end in Las Vegas in the early 2000s. Little did we know what was coming 20 years later, but it all started to go up, go down, and then the broker started to fire everybody. And I thought, well, I can do everybody's job. I just want to keep a job. Just keep paying me my $12 an hour,
Mm.
rolling in dough, and learned how to run a brokerage because of that. And I slowly replaced basically everyone in this very small boutique brokerage, and slowly moved on to another foreclosure broker, and worked with Fannie Mae and HUD and everybody else. Learned how more so how to be an operations manager there, and still marketing, still kind of jack of all trades, wearing all the hats, and learned slowly how not how any job is not a good job, and you just should not sit somewhere for 11 years and hope that they're going to make you successful or that someone's going to make you great. You're going to make yourself great, and you're going to get your own paycheck because nobody's ever going to pay you what you'll pay you.
Mm.
And from there, kind of fumbled around opening a brokerage and going into commercial real estate, trying everything, and eventually found that wow, I'm good with coaching people, and I like coaching people, and I speak their language in real estate. And somewhere along there, along the lines there's a lot of authenticity stories as well because I was told that I could
Yeah.
not be myself, and that's kind of a story that we met on in the alliance. And I hated real estate because I was always told that I was not allowed to be who I was, whatever that
Mm.
is. Don't wear
Mm.
interesting things. Don't dye your hair. Don't tell people that you're gay. Don't tell people that you're married to the same gender. Don't let them know that because you will ruin your career.
Mm.
This was still back, even though it's only 10-ish years ago, which is ridiculous. I still heard things like when I started in the marketing position in the brokerage that I was with, I was basically the secretary. And I still heard things like men can't be secretaries.
Mm. Wow.
So it's not like I'm talking about the 70s and the 80s. This was 2000s, 2010. I still got this weird look of like, well, what are you doing behind a desk? You're a man.
Right.
It's very weird.
Like, how could you be in a support role? You are a male.
Yes. And yet every time
Right.
I went to the broker at the beginning, because they were making money hand over fist in the good old days of new home sales. You just sat at a new home site and they paid you twenty to $40,000 a month, and you sold like hotcakes. We used to say you could put a contract on like the back of a dog and send it through the grocery store and it would come out signed.
Wow.
And that was the rate of people they were serving. And I always went to the broker and I said, I want to do that because I was making literally $12 an hour. And every Monday these agents came in and I was giving them their money. I was the secretary, so I was handing them $20,000, $40,000 checks. And I'm like, I want to do that. And she always said, no, you couldn't possibly do that. You couldn't do that.
Wow.
You don't have that in you. And that's also another good 11 years of my life of hearing, you're not that. You could never be me. No, no. And what they really wanted
Zach,
to
I
say,
want to, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but you're saying
a lot.
so many important. No, the reason I'm interrupting your flow is because you're saying so many important things that I know if I can relate to them, there is a lot of people listening to your episode right now that can as well. And I just wanted to lean in and ask you a couple questions about them because they're so relevant. For one, this system and notion of labels, right? We have all been reared up in, and it's certainly can be different based on gender, age, economic, demographic, part of the region of the country, the world. Certainly, those labels, I think, if you agree, can ebb and flow a little bit. But one of the things you're saying is that it's a real thing to struggle with, I don't fit in box A, but I
Mm,
don't really fit in box B, but I don't know if I can attain box C. Like,
yes.
maybe there's something in the middle there.
Mm,
And really, just in numerous ways, you just said that, and I wanna go a little bit deeper on that. And the second thing is this idea that you were starting in an at the time, in a new industry called real estate. Now you're very tenured in that, but your story is starting where you were a junior and you were newer and you were coming up and learning from the different, hats at this boutique. And you, as your career was growing or you were gaining skill, you basically felt bias and prejudice, and you were told no, and you're not the right, in this case, gender, or, don't stand out from the crowd too much. And, those are such painful parts of, I think, just growing up and becoming adults.
yeah.
But certainly when you do tap into that thing that lights you up, like
Mm,
you said it towards the end, I realized I'm actually a coach. I'm
mm,
actually a teacher. I'm many, many things, Zach, but I'm that.
yeah.
And so how have you sort of moved from, one of our guests on episode 1, she calls it, you gotta go to work to buy peanut butter, and
Mm.
it
Oh,
sticks
yeah.
with me because it's so charming and just straightforward and everybody gets it. We all are living in a capitalistic society that requires money to put food in our mouth and put a roof over our head and so on and so forth. So tell us how you sort of having that courage and grinding. You're giving us a really good timeline. You're like 11 years and then 11 years, and this didn't all happen overnight like anybody's careers. I think that whoever's on this show, that's one thing we can all agree on. Most, things don't happen overnight even if they appear that they have. So tell us a little bit then, like, when you say, my business coaching and my marketing coaching and speaking at conferences is really the thing that I love and grounds me and I'm good at. But how did you get your first kick at the can?
Mm,
Like, how did you become a speaker at the National LGBTQ plus Alliance conference that happens every year? How did you get invited to the premier real estate coaching marketing organization called Inman? I think that's such an important part of your story,
yeah.
because I know I'll put myself in that story for a minute. Is I kept being so afraid to try something that is
Mm,
still within my wheelhouse,
mhm.
right? It's not as if you're going and speaking about things you don't know about.
Right.
That would make no sense. No one would hire you or request your appearance. But how did you get the courage? And what was that pivotal shift or that lane shift that kind of gave you that first kick at the can?
It was the authenticity and embracing the authenticity of who I really was, who I always was.
Mm.
When you talk to someone who knew me in 2015 and who still knows me now, they'll say that there's a 2000% change. Like that, I was allegedly, as they just describe it, I was the shy uh, dude in the office that talked to nobody and just kind of worked away and had no opinions, and I was just this very neutral individual,
So you
and
broke out of that.
I broke out
I
of
mean, that
that.
was sort of
Yeah,
like evolution step
yes,
1,
yeah,
so to
and
speak, like
that really was,
really breaking that shell off of
yeah,
you. Yeah.
and that was when I all my life I've been waiting for somebody else. I kind of mentioned this a little earlier. A
Mm,
little piece of that was I was waiting for somebody else to give me the money, give me
mm.
the fame, the money, the stardom, the everything I wanted. I've
The
always,
job title, right?
yes,
Is that
yeah,
right? We've
yeah,
talked about that on this show. I
exactly,
think
yeah,
sometimes we get hung up on
yeah,
our job
yeah.
title.
I was waiting, and I kept trying everything that I knew. Like you get a job and you hunker down and you do. Okay, that didn't work, and then you stay there for 11 years and you do freaking everything, and that doesn't work. And then you open your own thing, or you go get involved with other people and open something, and that doesn't work. I was waiting for everybody else to fill me up. And then when all that didn't work, and I said, I don't like selling. I'm not a selling broker. I am a teaching broker, and learning that those agents that I had nurtured succeeded and then came back to me. After it
Mm,
was all over, they still came back to me and said, I want your training. I want your education. You're giving it to me the right way. And through that, I was because I got into the broker realm thinking I don't want to be known as the gay broker. Because even then I was authentic, but not totally authentic. I just didn't want to like pigeonhole us as an office or me as a person. But
mm,
the more I became myself, the more that was very evident who I was and all that. And then I saw what everyone's talking about is once you become more of your authentic self, you attract more of your people, more of your tribe, and you make even more money and more success from that. And it's the success you wanted because now you're happy because you're being yourself. And every agent that came to me for training and coaching, I would dig down with them and they would basically say the same thing that I said all those years is I hate this. I hate being a realtor because, well, I have to do it because I have to make money, but I can't be who I
mm.
want to be. And that was the same story over and over, whether it was they weren't being their true LGBT self or they weren't being their true female self. Like, I can't be the woman I want to be or the type of woman I want to be. I have to be a strong masculine woman to make it in the commercial real estate realm. I have to be something I'm not. And that's what I kept hearing over and over and over again. And we drill down on these business plans and what is your passion? What is your superpower? Where do you want to go? And I'd show them like you can be all of those things and fit this into your business. And then they do it and it would work and we'd all be surprised.
Oh,
Yeah,
this actually taking step A, B, and C gets an outcome.
it
It's a
actually,
miracle.
yeah,
I love that though, that,
yeah,
because I'm just gonna pause for 1 second because what I'm thinking about being an 11-year boots on the streets sales professional broker,
yeah,
and also in the last handful of years growing these other interests that I not only love, but to our conversation and to you being a colleague and someone that's coached me, which I'll get to that in a minute, being an advisor, right? We call it a teacher, an advisor, a coach, an advocate. Those are other hats, um, that I think that you maybe don't realize that you love it or that you're good at it
yeah,
until you've done
yeah,
I mean, I'm in sales right now. I'm providing broker support this minute with stakeholders called buyers and sellers this moment here
yes,
at 9:35 a.m. As soon as I get off this podcast, I have clients waiting for my return and for my contract excellence and for my coaching and for my pricing strategies. Insert.
mhm,
So nothing but gratitude and nothing but respect for what it takes to be a high producing or a successful sales
right,
broker. But
absolutely.
the point that you're making, which I love and I think is so important for our audience to hear, Zach, is that if that runs its course, right?
Mm,
You may love that for
yeah,
5, 3, 10, 20, 30 years. It's okay to start identifying how you can take all of that goodness and put it into maybe your next career move or get out, right? I mean, and I know that takes a lot of strategy and courage and planning. I'm not being trite, but I love that you're defining kind of how your journey went and how it was impacted.
and to make money with it. That was what I was hearing was, well, I have to be a buyer agent or a selling agent, listing agent, because that makes the most money. And then we dig down in like the hundreds of other things that happen in the real estate industry. And photographers make a lot of money. Escrow
Mhm.
officers make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different roles that make a lot of money. So we would identify that. And usually they would stick with buying or listing because then they learned how to be themselves and they loved it because of that.
Sort of getting out of our
Oh,
own
yeah,
way. Like you
exactly.
gave him perfect coaching. Like the individual in front of you was like, well, we talk about this a lot on Superpower is keeping your creativity and your uniqueness, the thing that
Yes.
makes you special, right? It's like your pads of your fingers, like
Mhm.
nobody else is going to have them. Well, that's your whole being. I mean, that is
Yeah.
really my belief is what we're all here in this state of flesh right
Mm.
now is, how can you bring your special sauce to
Right.
all the things you do,
Mhm.
right? Because you're in control of doing that. It's your game plan. And I love like what a rewarding path you're on, Zach, that you're helping guide people, right? To
Yes.
that, to figure that out.
And the rest of that answer, that very long answer, is then the next step is you just have to do something.
Oh, right.
It.
Oops.
Yeah. It's
You
like,
have to like shit or get off the pot. Is that one of the
yes.
terms?
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly. No, totally. Yeah. Good old term there.
Mhm.
That's what happened with me was I was teaching others and then I thought, well, I've got to do my own, I've got to follow my own advice here.
Yes.
And one of my
Do as I say, not as I do,
exactly.
right? I think
And
I heard that growing up a few times.
exactly. And one of my main things was, what do you love to do within the community? Do you love to help people? Do you like to volunteer at the LGBTQ center, the homeless shelter, the women's center? What do you do? And we would always work that into the business plan as what part of that business could be, because that lights you up. And people think that their charitable side does not go with their business side because that's somehow like betraying something. You're faking something there. It's not, it doesn't feel right to use that for business, but you're not using it for business. You're just incorporating your entire life together. And while you're volunteering at the center, you're getting clients who know you as the person that you are, loving them, helping them, getting them their food bags or their whatever they're needing that week at the center, or the group that they're coming to attend, or the drag bingo that they're coming to attend. And they're knowing you as who you are, and that just happens to also be a real estate salesperson. So go with that. And then I thought, well, what lights me up? And that was one of the things that does light me up. So I got involved in my local center, but then also what type of groups are out there. Found the LGBTQ plus alliance, got involved in that, and and I went to the one conference, fell in love with everyone. Everyone fell in love with me. The first conference in Vegas. And the more I got out as myself and talking to people and just having conversations, and every conversation I have turns into like a mini coaching session. So I thought I want to speak. I want to be up there. I want to be like all those amazing people on that stage who are inspiring people. That's who I want to be. And scared the hell out of me for sure. But Houston was our second conference, so I just applied, and they called me up and said, because you just put in what you're going to talk about it, and you know what you're thinking about, and they called and they're like, well, could you send us your speech, or like your CV of every time you've done this. I'm like, well, I've never done this before. This is the first time I'm ever going to do this. So I kind of did a PowerPoint, walked them through on camera what I would say, and I guess that was good enough because they
Yeah.
approved it. And as we talked a little bit about in Central Park on my podcast together, which will be out hopefully soon as well. But when I did it, and what I've learned about public speaking ever since, is that what you feel internally in your own review is, of course, the harshest review you could possibly have is yourself. And I stood up there and thought I just was horrible. And I was shaking and I was nervous. I was sweating. I didn't think I was flowing through things well enough. The room was full of people. I had a full crowd for my first Alliance speaking gig. And you were in that audience and making me very nervous because you look like a very serious person sometimes.
That's hilarious. I
Knowing
didn't know it was so
now,
intimidating.
yeah. Well, you were this big broker from Washington State, and all these strangers, and the room was full of strangers to hear my discussion about authenticity and activism, and how that ties into your business. And I thought, the other part of that is the things that we're talking about are things we're very intimately aware of ourselves. So sometimes we fool ourselves with that imposter syndrome to say, well, I'm talking about something that everyone surely knows. Surely. Once again, like when I crawled out of the womb thinking everyone knows what I know, they don't. They don't know any of this stuff that I know, or they don't have the same grasp on it that I do, or the same perception of it. So even if I'm sharing a similar topic, it's a different perception, and people appreciate that. What I have learned from public speaking and public speaking classes ever since is that people are dying for your story. They're dying to hear everything we have to say. That's why there's never going to be enough podcasts or shows. Everyone can have one, because everyone wants to hear what we have to say. There's somebody out there. And when I taught, then I got off the stage with you at the first speaking gig, and you approached me, thank goodness, and said it was great. And you asked me really good questions. And you were the first one out of several that conference that came up to me and said what I had discussed really touched them or made them think. And I heard a lot of, I'm still thinking about what you said 3 days ago. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy, but great. And I can do this. And then when you learn more speaking things as you go along, you get to you get to practice in front of people finally, or people that are your peers, and you get to ask them questions. And I got to ask that question that always haunted me was, well, do you hear my voice shaking? Do you see me sweating? Do you see it just turned red? And they're like, no, none of that. Nothing happened there. That was like a beautiful presentation. It was smooth as ever. Like, okay. And the more you know that, then the more you go out there and say, okay, I'm shaking inside and freaking out, but they don't know that. So
Yeah.
I'm actually going to do a really good job here.
So I love just
It's a ping pong ball.
going back with
Like,
you. Well, exactly the ping pong, but just like personally going back with you, listening to that story, because that is exactly how we met. It was a little over 2 years ago at the LGBTQ plus Real Estate Alliance's national conference called The Experience. And when I think about after your program and in general session, right, like most conferences, I think it was the actual like cocktail mixing hour and walking up to you and sharing just what you shared with our listeners. But thing that I think is super important to take away from that, it's a reminder for me, and hopefully it assists somebody listening to this episode, is that these things can change actually really fast because there's many things that inspired me about seeing your program, Zach. One is I was just like, I want to be friends with him. So I'm glad that's happening and that's becoming deeper. But part two is you looked at your audience in that class that you were teaching, that program, and you just said, just try it. Like many things you were talking about, but just pull the band-aid off and just give it a whirl. And there's two things that I owe you tremendous gratitude for, and your ability to be so kind and open and inclusive with me and like helping to lift me up just as another industry friend is you said, I have a podcast. You're like, you know, you can do it. Like you can figure that out. So that's one thing. And the second, with a lot of help and support from the amazing humans that are helping me do this, but certainly you got to have the courage to just say, I'm going to try it. Right. That's number one. And number two is auditioning to speak at the Alliance conference. And, I think just looking back is it's that saying that is sounds a little bit like simple, but showing up is half the work. And I think that there's so much power in that because my gosh, I have imposter syndrome like you can't believe. I'm working on shedding my insecurity by the minute all the time. And I suppose on some level, I hope to keep having that humble heart and that servant's heart and always wanting to define who are my gurus, who are my coaches, right? Just like the organization Audiotocracy here that helps me put this podcast on. Those are individuals in my life that are what I call my angels, my support system, my gurus, my experts. So I think having an earnest respect for that, we all need it. We all have it. Right? Nobody does it alone. I mean, even if you are a solo professional, there's a village of people that you lean into, call on, and guide and coach you. And you're doing that for people right now, Zach, in your career life. But I just wanted to kind of relive that story of I was in the audience, I was one of your learners, I was at your program and you've just been so pivotal in leading by example that you can do anything. You just got to make a plan, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Figure out how to do A, B, and C and just start the ball rolling. So thank you
Yes.
so much.
And on the other side of that, never be afraid to tell someone how you're feeling or what moved you. there's so, and the more seasoned at this I get, the more people, and you'll find the same, is that more people will think, oh, you are the pro and you don't need any more pats on the head or any reassurance. And that, I don't think that ever goes away for anybody. So I think, most humans understand that, like, we always need that reassurance. We always need that extra little something. But the fact that y'all came up to me after that, and no matter how good I might have appeared to do, you said the right things. You said what had moved you, what had motivated you. You had good questions, and that was so important to my progress and my success to go forward then and say, okay, I did this, I did the thing, and it was really scary, and that went really well. So I did it again and again and again.
Mm.
And when I got involved with last year, Las Vegas Realtors Association chose me as their chair for the diversity committee, and that is, microphone every month in front of a sea of people that you don't know. And I knew I was going to blow it the first couple times. Don't know if anyone noticed that, but it was terrible on the microphone, like holding it. How does this work? You just don't know, because most of us have no training to do anything like we're doing, until we do it. But that's always the key, is like, find that passion. What do you want to do? But then, very importantly, just do it, and don't wait until you're seasoned or trained or educated. You just have to go up there and do it. And I knew that that whole year of being on the microphone would force something out of me, because I saw it in my peers from previous years. They started out quiet little mousy folks on microphones, and we end up like commanding the room by the end of the year, because we've been in front of all these people all this time. So practice, of course, makes perfect.
So you just touched on something, and we talked about it in your podcast that I know you're launching here soon. But from a marketing coach standpoint, for one, the visual and the aesthetic of what you put out, what your content is,
Yes.
as a very visually motivated, creative, artistic person, I'm like super sensitive to that, and I have a lot of feelings around it. One of your most recent content developments is you have this art bubble, the like speaking bubble, if I'm saying it right, like when you're saying something, like the emoji.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
you said the best thing, I'm going to repeat it for everyone listening, and certainly it will encourage them to start following your pages. But this is the number one thing I hear from my own head. My sister, Lisa Milkovich, whom I'm in business with, and anybody that I've ever taught a class to or spoke to, is I just don't like to see myself on video. And your post is so direct, and knowing your dry, amazing, brilliant humor, you're like, yep, that's what your face looks like. It's like good, bad, or indifferent. Like just work
That's
with it. Like we
We're
all we
working
all
with
gotta
you.
work with what we have here. And at first glance, again, I hope whoever's listening to this, they go to your page and see the full beauty of this message. I'm probably destroying it right now. But the directness of just like, yep, that's what you look like. And you know what? Keep doing it. Like keep putting out content and information and being a leader and guiding and having a voice. So anyway, I thought that was the best. And I commented, you saw, I was like,
Yeah.
brilliant, love it.
I love that. Yeah, that's the major thing to overcome, is the initial stuff that we're so psychologically pre-programmed for, because nobody likes their voice when they hear it. Nobody likes what
This
they see.
notion that it has to be perfect,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
and I'm not suggesting not doing all to have
Yeah.
things be well and
Oh
well
yeah.
packaged and sound good.
Yes.
That
Oh yeah.
but especially like reels and stories and from the streets, day in the life of a real estate broker, right? There you're gonna have the blunders and the this and the pimple and the spinach in your teeth or whatever happens, right? You're gonna trip and you're gonna be like, I'm on the side of the road at an open house. I just tripped. Here we go.
Exactly. And that will get you more hits and more watches than anything, because when you're a super polished person that pays all of this money to get somewhere that they think they need to be, as in some of the people I talk to, they're like, well, I need to get the lipo first and then some Botox, and then I need to go and get all these classes and buy all this equipment, and then we'll do the video. And if that actually happens ever, which usually it doesn't, but if it does,
Still alive
boring.
when that list gets done.
Right,
Let's go ahead
exactly.
and
Yeah, if
meet
you're
up.
still and if you're still alive, then you are as boring as ever, and no one is going to watch that because you're not tripping, you're not human anymore. You've superseded everything, everyone else that's watching, and now you're less of an interesting individual selling real estate. You just have to be who you are because that's what people are tuning in for is who you are. And we don't see, much like the shivering and shaking on stage that people don't see, they don't see what you see the same way. They don't see yourself the same way. And one of the coaching things I do is we list off like what's wrong with you. Go ahead, tell me all the things, and we'll go through all of that, and I'll tell you how I have probably have the same thing. Like I didn't like my voice for a very, very long time, and I always thought I had to redo things. And just another nugget that came up there with buying things. If success was based on the equipment that you had, I would be a bazillionaire by now because I always thought I just need the better computer, the better microphone, the better something. And I did that all through like from 1999 until current because technology grew and we always had something better. And I always thought if I could just buy that next best thing, and eventually you will have all the things, and you'll be like, wow, none of that got me any more watches, any more clients than the dude who just opened their phone and did a video or turned on a pixelated webcam from 2003 and did a video. It's still the same. It's the same stuff. So stop waiting is what I'd like.
Really
Just
good sound advice. It sounds like you're a coach. It
yeah, does
really does.
it?
I'm picking up on this here. Oh man. So a couple other things, and I don't know if you watched, but of course this episode will launch weeks later. But last night, my wife and I watched the Grammys. It's
Oh,
something
I did.
we love to do, and we really love music and just, of course, the entertainment, the creativity. There were so many moments. I'm a big crier. I get all emotional about people's stories, all the things. So I was kind of a hot mess. But the thing
Yeah.
that kept happening from the voices of the artists, whether they were presenting or up there, receiving an award or doing a set, entertaining, is just the uniqueness. They're just the individuality, like every single artist, their flavor, their voice, their backstory, where they came from, the struggles, the tribulations. Oh my gosh. And then having a culmination of being honored and recognized by your community as just doing great in what you do and bringing in this case, as we know, music is for the world, or at least we hope so, and for our own creative consumption. But it goes back to some of the things we're talking about here in this episode with you, Zach, is, staying on the path and
Yes.
knowing that, you can figure out how to have your authentic voice, right? Whether you're a global Grammy award winning sensation or a tenured one like Shakira and Beyonce and some of the amazing, Alicia Keys that were honored with just their brilliance and their tenure and all the impact they make in our lives in so many ways from a musical standpoint is, I think, getting out of our way and just remembering that, you, Zach, impacted me. I know you've impacted lots of people, but you impacted me. You've impacted my psyche and my heart and my soul and my life. And I think just we can't remember that enough, right?
Sure do.
Because life's freaking hard. And man, do we get beat up and do we get shot down and told no 8 million times and told we don't have the right look or we're not the right age or we don't fit into that label. And
Still,
so I just want to just encourage you, and thank you to keep going and to keep doing what you're doing and impacting so many people because it's not just me, I'm one story that you've impacted, but I just thank you for helping us kind of remember that.
thank you for saying so because I do need to hear that, and I see that what I have to say it has helped many people, and it's something I didn't ever expect that I'd have the opportunity for, being that I was clearly a very different individual from what most humans out there apparently expected. So being that I was able to then like walk into my authenticity and become who I am, and that actually means so much to so many people. And that's like, I don't want to sound like it's a bragging thing, but I have noticed that I've helped several people. So
Well, I think this is just the term I use. I know that we both choose, and it's volunteer to serve on boards, and we choose to have outreach in our community in addition to our clients and our work and our, the base of our career. But, think that having a servant's heart, that's the term that feels right to me. That's how I define it when asked. There's something about that that just it has to be, right? Like
right.
the day that I can't do that will be the day that I just don't have the energy or, I just for whatever reason my physical stamina just can't keep doing it. And I hope that that's when I'm like 105, but it would take that. I mean, it would take because it's not like, "Oh, I like to do it," or you touched on it earlier. Of course, it builds relationships and helps build business, and it's a part of your overall brand story. But I just I have to do it to feel like me. I
Yeah.
mean, I have
So
to do it to feel authentically me because it's that important to me. So maybe touch on that a little bit because I know you coach to that as well.
yeah, that's the hard part to keep going when
Some days are pretty
yeah,
tiring.
hiring and that is something that well maybe it's a learned behavior at least for me that has stuck a bit more and better than it used to, because it used to be so easy to forget who I am and that I am wanted and that my opinion is needed or at least wanted out there. And that's why I do like to surround myself with as many people as I can that remind me of that and echo that. But there's still, at the end of the day, it's you. You're the one with that closes it all up, and the show is done. And
Our shop is closed, it's 11 at night.
yes,
Yeah,
and
you have to have the ability to be a driver,
yeah,
right?
you're
I
there
mean,
alone.
and
Yeah.
we talked about this at Inman Connect in New York is, the disc test and there's all kinds of, who moved my cheese and what color is your umbrella and there's 8 million of them. Whether you're an S, a C, a D, these are profile sort of algorithms that sort of define some personality or
Mm,
styles for listeners that have never taken the disc, but Zach and I were discussing that. So certainly, I think when you're a high D or a D with a little bit of the organizing, project management C, there is sort of this innate
yes.
energy in you that's just, again, be it your astrological sign, be it how you were raised. There's so many ways that we all get to kind of our adult bent or, our talents,
Yeah.
if you will. But I think it's so important the transparency of it takes a lot in this modern
Yeah.
world to run businesses and be of community contribution. Your cup can get empty real
Oh
fast.
yeah, really, really fast, and it takes practice. This is definitely a point of practice because in 2024, I think I was at that I would say was the peak and the height of a lot of things that I was working towards for many years. The Alliance, I became the president of Las Vegas Alliance, the chair of diversity, like I had mentioned. I was chosen in another selection that just came about because of who I was and what I put out there was the Nevada State Realtors had their leadership academy and chose me to be a part of that class of 24. And I knew throughout all of this, because when you're in it and you're the president or you're a big part of something, everybody loves you and everyone wants to be your friend and everyone is behind you. And I know and knew that when 2024 came to an end, the plug would be pulled. I would not be the president anymore. I'd not be the chair anymore. I'd just be back to being marketing performance coach Zach and all the other things I do and all that I know I am. But had I not had the practice of what it feels like for that plug to be pulled many times before, you probably wouldn't be seeing me for months. Like I would have been so distraught of the people who, because you no longer have a title, they no longer pay any attention to you. They're not really your friend. They're not there for you anymore like they were. They're not supporting you. Suddenly they can't get anything out of you and therefore for themselves. So then therefore they're done. And I'm not saying that's particularly wrong. It certainly sucks, but I knew that was coming and I was not surprised. And that was extremely important for my survival as who you know me as. I was ready for that because I've experienced it all my life. When you get any sort of position or any sort of power, you just immediately after losing that, you're like 95% of the people are no longer in the room with you. And that's fine. But that is where you have to be like, who am I? Remember who I am, remember what I do, and surround yourself with the people who are left who actually do love you and do support you.
Mhm.
That's super important. So to remember that also is, and that's when you're alone at night. It's 11 o'clock. The store is closed, and it's just you and your beverage of choice. So you gotta figure.
Being grounded
Yeah,
in who you are, what you have to contribute, what your needs are too, right? Because you
yes,
have to have all of that to be able to give and serve.
you're getting yourself up in the morning.
Well, I think you also identified as we start to wrap up the episode that there's also a time and a place for
Mm,
certainly all things. But, when we think about roles and being a part of a group or an organization, if we're all fortunate to have a nice long tenured career, we have to also get comfortable with and understanding that those roles and those accountabilities can come and go. So
you
I
will.
think that you've really helped explain that really well and remind us of that. Well, Zach, I always learn something new about not only about you, but for that I can take into my own life and put into action. And
Good.
this episode and this recording is no exception. I'm so grateful for your time. I know time is our biggest commodity, and I do not take that lightly. So, we do close down every superpower episode with asking if you had to choose just one that you feel most sure of most days, that you bring to the array of people that you just outframed. It could be real estate brokers, it could be folks through your political and national organizations you're on, could be your family and friends, your peer groups. What would be the one superpower that you feel most connected to?
I tried to find something unique. I tried to dig down and find like not the answer that you know is probably coming, but I think the superpower has to be authenticity.
Mm,
It's the thing that I thought everyone knew it already. They don't know it already. It is something I bring to the table clearly and inspire in others and make them feel comfortable with. I've never heard so many people say, I can ask you anything. And it's an open, safe place. So I am a safe space for authenticity, if anything. And
great. I love it.
that's
Couldn't agree
what it
more.
is. That's what it is.
Couldn't agree more. I love it. Well, with that authenticity, thank you for being so transparent and open. I have a blast every time I to see you, even in this sense, virtually and talk to you. And thank you so much, Zach, for everything you're doing out there in the marketplace. And please keep it up. Keep up your energy because we need more Zachs in the world. So thank you so much for being on Superpower.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much as well. And you keep being super yourself.
Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll make it easy for others to enjoy it too. You can do that by subscribing, writing a review, and sharing episode links with others. Then you'll be my superhero.